Your Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is now time for our bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight. That means we welcome back Erica L. Ayala. And Erica, we have a first Walter Cup champion.
Yes, indeed. It is the PWHL Minnesota team that once again, Minnesota has this history, Rachel, of coming into a new league, being like, hey, we're the new kids on the block, and then taking the trophy. They've claimed the Clarkson Cup. They've claimed the Isabel Cup, and now they have the Walter Cup.
I know. It's so crazy that this pattern has continued.
I guess that's why they call it the state of hockey, Gil.
Yeah, no question. Minnesota has a great hockey tradition, and now this adds to it. And congratulations, obviously, to Minnesota.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, I Rachel, you can mute yourself if you need to for this, but you know, also congratulations to Boston. You know, they did we know how I feel about that city, but you know, they did push the series to 5 games. We had some pretty close contests, including a double overtime where Boston again pushed the issue on that game 4 on Sunday, May 26th. But ultimately, Minnesota was the victor. And, you know, I want to talk about a narrative that was very much a part of the celebration. And I'm a little bit torn about it, Rachel. And that is Kendall Coyne-Schofield, kind of heralded as a champion here, definitely leaned into this season coming back as a mom. And we kind of hear the thing about like dad power in hockey, right? After a player comes back, after they have their first child or a child. And, you know, this is something in sports that it is difficult to come back from, just in life, probably. I cannot say, I've never given birth, but you know, having a child, it's a lot. And then taking care of a child is a lot. And then doing that while playing professional hockey is a lot. And I feel like we've held up that part of Kendall Coyne-Schofield's legacy maybe a little bit more than the fact that she was one of the pioneering players to advocate for what we now see as the PWHL. Rachel, what are your thoughts overall on that?
I don't know, like, was her kid crying in the cup symbolic of all that? Who can say? But that being said, I think that yeah, you know, especially because she was part of that NWHL/PHF team in Minnesota that won the Isabel Cup as well. Like, her legacy in hockey is so tremendous, and to reduce her, I mean, reduce is maybe the wrong word, but to simplify her,
yes,
as a mom, I think is a disservice to her as a leader in this game.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, sound bites and social media post skill are only going to give you a little bit of that. And I don't want to diminish the fact that, again, we live in a society where we're not far removed. You can look at Allison Felix. You can look at Candace Parker. You can look at so many examples of women who felt, just in sports, this is not even talking about in other industries, Gil, where women do feel that once they become a mother and they make that choice to just, you know, take on motherhood in any form, whether they gave birth to a child or not, that does impact their earning potential.
Yeah, I mean, that is still an issue in our society today. And we have made progress over my mother's generation, my grandmother's generation, but there's still more that needs to be done. And it is still an issue.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I'm very curious to see, you know, how this team is immortalized beyond just that and the snapshots that we're getting, which includes, of course, Taylor Heise, who becomes the first ever MVP of the playoffs. And Taylor had an interesting journey, Rachel, was the number one overall pick to Minnesota, but then was in and out of the lineup for a while, I believe,
Right.
including in the playoffs due to some injuries. So, what did you see from Heisey? And maybe another storyline that we've been seeing a flutter is, was there another player that perhaps had an outstanding performance that also should have been recognized?
Yeah, I think, you can't deny that Taylor Heisey made an incredible impact on this season overall, and she was tied for the lead in points in the playoffs. She played, the full 10 games that Minnesota played. But I think, she was tied with her teammate Michelle Cava, first
Mhm.
off, in point totals,
Mhm.
just having one more goal than her. And I think that this is just one of those prime examples where I felt like, from an offensive perspective in Minnesota, it was more of a team effort here.
Yeah.
And that, for me personally, I would have given it to Aerin Frankel, the goaltender of
Ooh.
Boston, because I feel like the burden she had relative to everybody else on the ice was so much greater than any individual on that Minnesota team. I mean, Sophie Jakes had a breakout
Yes.
playoffs. The
Yes.
aforementioned Kendall Coyne Schofield. There were so many offensive players that contributed here, but Aerin Frankel literally carried this Boston team on her back. And if you look at the playoff statistics, she faced 300 shots on goal in the playoffs, right? 169 more shots faced than Kristen Campbell, who was the next highest with 131.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we know that Toronto got booted,
Mhm.
earlier. So that's wild. That is quite wild. And I think that it's rare in sports, Gil. We've seen it happen,
It
but
has.
it's very rare in sports that we see someone from the losing team win. And I think there's a little bit. I remember being a part of well, we can say it now because this league doesn't exist. But in the PHF, we were having a walkthrough for what would end up being the last ever Isabel Cup final, and we were doing the walkthrough with the broadcast, and the broadcast at the time had very strong feelings. We have to pick we don't care who it is, but pick someone from the winning team. And I remember being like, well, I mean, shouldn't the MVP be the most valuable player?
It is rare, and I wonder, excuse me, I wonder if, because this is the very first Walter Cup, that they were a little more hesitant to sort of go outside the box and vote for someone from a team that didn't win.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't know where fans really stand on this. I know I certainly have my opinion. I think there's just some performances that head and shoulders above the rest, and it doesn't matter. You have to honor. That's what, at least I believe these awards to be. And I think Aerin Frankel is a great example. But to your point, also, Rachel, Michaela Cava, who has won an Isabel Cup championship when with the Toronto Six. Eight points, tied with Taylor Heisey. So do you appreciate goals more than assists? Maybe. Sophie Jakes, also great storyline, and even for the drama, I maybe would have, if I was there voting as a media member, I might have given it to Sophie Jakes, who, as you may recall, Gil and Rachel, we talked about on this segment a while back, because she was a part of the first ever trade and got traded, as it would be, from Boston to Minnesota.
Imagine that.
Yes, imagine that. So overall, congratulations, Sticks Taps, to the PWHL. I mean, we talked about it. This was a sprint to get this thing going. And I think that there are definitely some things that were bumps in the road that will be hopefully fine-tuned and resurfaced, if you will. But there's also some things, I mean, the broadcast quality, just being able to find the games, was something that was huge for women's hockey. And so what is next? Well, immediately, Rachel, we will have this team, PWHL New York CTLI, and I got to add an NJ in there. PWHL New York will have the first overall pick. And we talked about the draft is coming up, I should say, in a couple of weeks, in June. Yes, in June. I think it's over the 9th and 10th or 10th and 11th. Either way, they're doing a few things also with awards and whatnot. But it's going to be interesting to see if the PWHL New York team will name a coach before the draft. I think there's a lot of value added in doing that. It also sounded, and we talked about this on another segment before, that general manager Pascal Daou was not. He of course agreed it would be ideal, but it wasn't necessarily the most pressing thing. I think it sounded like the most pressing thing was finding the right coach. And, just hearing buzzes here and there, I think that even for some of the players that they want to bring back and retain beyond their contracts, you have some players that are on a 1-year contract. You have some players that were on a multi-year contract. Getting the right coach and making sure that that team can stabilize at the top, I think is going to be critically important. So that's going to be one thing from a specific team market that we're looking at. Of course, the draft overall. Rachel, any names that stand out to you that you are curious to see where they end up?
Well, I mean, the biggest name is Amanda Castle.
Yes, that's right. And you want to talk about getting a coach for this team? I mean, Amanda Castle played for the Riveters in the NWHL. She never played in the PHF era. Has ties to the New York market, so that's huge. And I had always estimated and surmised that Kessel was kind of taking some time away from hockey because women's hockey has, let's just say, been through a lot. And Kessel's been there for a front seat, whether it's with the national team, with the leagues. She never really ever went to the CWHL when things kind of fell apart and other things. She's always kind of stayed in the New York market. So I think that's going to be interesting. But also, I think the number of players versus the number of spots is also interesting.
Right. So there's 167 players on the list for 42 spots in the 7-round draft. And this is not a new league anymore. So there's not, 8 open spots on each team.
No,
it's much, much smaller now because we have an established league. So, this feels very WNBA in terms of, maybe 6 to 8 draft picks get a regular spot on the roster for the season one, depending on skill level. Could be more than that, maybe 12 to 15. But that's about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that it makes it tough. And although on the one hand, you could see, Gil, that it makes it very elite. You could say that. However, we know that in elite level sports, at any level for any gender, there's also some politicking that goes on there. And some of them, right? I know. And then, in 2024, you also have to play the marketing game. And sometimes you get a player that the name maybe you think is, worth the squeeze, whereas they're not necessarily giving as much as they have in the past on the ice.
It happens. And yet, you have to sort of balance getting the best performance on the ice and selling tickets and selling jerseys and all of that stuff. So in the long run, you're probably better off putting the best team on the ice. But I could totally understand wanting to get, fans in the seats and sell merchandise. So how do you build your team and your league?
And that is the question, Gil, which leads us to the last little nugget, at least for this segment. Well, there's 2 potential nuggets that we're going to have to bite into as we get into the off season. But we're hearing one from Amanda Shearer, who is kind of leading kind of the marketing and driving force there on that arm of the PWHL. She said during the playoffs, during the finals, specifically on the broadcast, that the names We'll get official names coming soon, expected to launch before the next season. I know there was a little bit of a soft launch, a tease, and fans did not like those names. So there was a little bit of a rollback. So I'm curious to see what sticks. But then also, Rachel, something that we'll definitely talk about in the offseason, but at a commissioners meeting, Amy Shearer also said that the PWHL thinking of changing its season to quote unquote a traditional hockey off season with the particular intent for providing opportunities to players to play in other leagues overseas and in the PWHL. When you talk about maybe taking trends from the WNBA but going the wrong way, this to me kind of sounds like one of those.
Yeah, 100%. It smells fishy because it is. And the whole point was to create a sustainable league where people had a living wage to play hockey professionally.
What, like it's hard?
And yeah, I mean, that's what's so interesting about it is like, you know, the women's leagues that have existed before have understood this struggle and the money involved, the costs, the budgets. There's a reason why we haven't gotten to this point yet.
Yeah.
And it's if you're gonna like backtrack here, I don't know that I like that.
Not to mention that if they do play in the hockey offseason, Gil, we talked about this a little off air, that would mean that they are competing, obviously not with the NHL, or at least not with the NHL in the regular season. The NBA and NHL would likely be in playoff mode when this league were to start, but they would be competing with what is likely their immediate catchment area, which is fans of the National Women's Soccer League. There's going to be a new women's soccer league in Canada coming up. And of course, the WNBA, the aforementioned WNBA, which has now a prioritization clause. And so they're doing a soft roll into creating in their CBA where they have to prioritize, especially domestic born, US born players have to prioritize the league. So I don't know where this is going to go, Gil, but we will have the updates here on the Women's Hockey Spotlight as part of the Locked On NHL show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Your team every day. Had to get that in. But yeah, no, it's an interesting story to keep an eye on, and we'll see where it goes. Erica, thank you as always. Great to have you here, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. I'm sure we'll have a lot of draft items to talk about.
Indeed. Thank you both.